Hey there, today I'm going to talk about a traditional knife that I've just acquired. It is the one on the far left hand side of my screen here. I'm not sure if you're seeing this right way up or wrong way up, so it's on my left here. It's the Great Eastern Cutlery number 74 under the Tidut brand name, sub-brand that they've got going on. So this here across the table is pretty much the Pantheon of pocket knife complexity really that you can get in Australia. There's a few more further this way if you're in the States, you get your automatics and that sort of thing, but really we've got it's about as simple as you can get all the way through to about as many moving parts as you can really fit into a knife before you start making it, button operating, automatic, that sort of thing. So why would you want a traditional knife? Well, that was something that I've always kind of wondered myself, because I've dabbled in a couple of traditionals in the past. I've always had a soft spot for Swiss Army knives, which are pretty much traditional knives with a few extra tools on them. What is a traditional knife? Well, it's the kind of the knife that your grandpa used to have. There are a few things that make a knife traditional, and it is generally down to the appearance and the more rustic operation of the knife. So something like this is about as traditional as you can get. So this is a slip joint, bone handled, carbon steel, bolstered folder opening with a nail nick. And that is very, very old fashioned. Knives like this have been around for hundreds of years, and it pretty much has no modern features whatsoever. I would say at about this point here, or maybe this point here, the knives would stop being traditional in terms of falling under that blanket. Almar does make some traditional style knives, but this one here has a bit more tech on it than perhaps it would allow in the traditional category. So, bone handle, two-hand operating, carbon steel blade. It's good carbon steel, but still not super flash powder steel, anything like that. There aren't many traditional knives that do the flash powder steels. Every now and then there'll be small batch runs made by underbrands such as Northwood or Queen. However, generally you're going to be getting either pretty basic stainless steel or pretty basic carbon steel. What you're paying for with a traditional knife, because these are expensive, this Great Eastern Cutlery is about a $150 knife in Australia, about a $100 knife, $80 and $100 in America. What you're paying for is the fit and finish, and I guess the element of being of handmadeness in it. So things like needing the bone to be slid in underneath these bolsters and then pressed and sealed down. All things that would need to be supervised quite meticulously on a one person to one knife kind of basis. And when you get that level of intricacy in the manufacturing process, you really do get knives with very clean, smooth bolsters, backlocks, so back springs, that sort of thing, and very nice grinds. Everything's pretty much as perfect as you can get it on this knife here, to my eye anyway. I'm not a big traditional knife guy, and the traditional knife people can certainly look at these a lot harder than me and pick all sorts of little flaws, but really, as far as being an example of a traditional knife, this is about as good as it gets so far that I've handled. Case, not too bad either. Often they'll have things like the shields will be a bit offset, less flush, bolsters not as sort of settled into the bone. Sometimes you might get some minor chipping under here. In case the knife steels aren't as good either. The carbon's not so bad, but the true sharp stainless doesn't hold a particularly long edge at all. I have been meaning to get one to put in my steel testing though. Anyway, so that's the Great Eastern Cutlery. So it has no modern features at all. It doesn't even lock. So moving up, I've got the Nieto. This is a Nieto. This is like a hunting folder, like sort of it's still a pocket knife. It's a little bit more stout and thick than the Great Eastern Cutlery. The blade's a slight bit longer, but not a huge amount. This is definitely more of your sort of folding hunting knife, and this one has a lockback on it for those more, I guess, intensive tasks. Perhaps if your hand is deep in the belly of a deer and you were to knock the back of the blade on a rib or something, pulling back, I guess a knife like this could well fold on your hand. So they've added this extra feature here. This is another really, really well-made knife. Miguel Nieto makes really, really nice, largely traditional knives. He makes some sort of combat soldier knives as well. And it's a really, really good one, and everything operates smoothly. When I first got this knife, I was stupid enough to use a work sharp on it, and I took the tip off. So I have since reprofiled this one. and it is now quite a nice, got a nice mirror edge there, and it's got a tip again, which is really good too. So yeah, really good. This is a micarta style handle, like it's contoured micarta and machined. Micarta is still a fairly traditional handle material. Micarta really does span all genres of knives. So this one here, rather than being bone, they do micarta. You can get these in micarta, in wood, in Delrin, in bone, of course. Even in some pretty standard plastics and whatnot, various types of G10 and denim micarta, linen micarta, burlap micarta, all sorts of things like that, but the general pattern will be largely the same. Sometimes they'll be more curved, sometimes they'll have a bolster on the end, sometimes the blade will be a different shape, but this is a very sort of by the numbers traditional knife, and that's why I bought it. Moving through the Pantheon, so you've got this Almar eagle. Again, it's got a very traditional looking appearance, however they've added a couple of extra things. It's got the mid-back lock, which is here, and it's got the thumb stud, which is here. As well as that, it has an optional pocket clip that you can start adding. You can get knives such as these. Buck make a pocket clipped version of their 110 hunting knife. There are a few that do add the pocket clips, but largely a rarity on traditional knives. So this one is a little bit more tech again, and of course with the thumb stud and that back lock you can begin to operate this knife with one hand, and it does operate very well with one hand. However, as far as modern folders go, still fairly traditional in terms of design, conservative, non-alarming. Then moving up again, you've got a Spyderco Centrafante 3. Now this is where they've started using quite modern FRN handle material. They've got a spider hole, which makes the knife one-hand opening, still a backlock, just a little bit more complexity to the grind. The VG10 steel will hold its edge probably about as long as the, this is AN34, so this is a 440C offshoot steel that Nieto composed himself, and this is 1095, so it should hold its edge about the same as if my steel testing so far is accurate. You can watch those steel testing videos and see the numbers at the end of the most recent one for yourself. So a pocket clip again, backlock, one hand opening, starting to get some more sort of modern space age lightweight plastic handle materials. And then moving on up again, you're maintaining the sort of one hand opening method. However, you're adding a bit more complexity with G10, and then you're using something of a more intricate lock system on this paramilitary too. This is a compression lock, so definitely going towards that fast, rapid action, one hand opening type business. And again, the G10, it's got milled out steel liners that are recessed as well. Again, many more steps in the process of making these knives. Fit and finish is good too, but the price is going up as well. Even over a knife like this, this is a really well fit and finished example of this type of knife, and as is this, but this one here, because it's got a higher end steel, higher end operating mechanisms and locking mechanisms and stuff like that, probably about an extra $100 in Australia to get a paramilitary 2 over a traditional knife, even a very nice one like this. Moving up again, you're into the complex opening methodologies. So you've got a flipper here, and this flipper is, this one's running on a captive bearing system, so it is a Teflon washer with bearings embedded into it, so they're not free rolling. And you've got a frame lock here, which is still a fairly simple locking method, probably about the same level of complexity in this knife due to the opening as these here. And again, you'll pay for that complexity, and you pay for the materials as well. M4 steel, titanium handle. They don't make, and I would love for them to start making sort of titanium handled versions of knives like this in super steels. That would really impress me. I do like this design a great deal. Pocket clip as well, one hand opening if you wish. And here you've got another step up in complexity. This is using IKBS, so non-captive bearings flowing loose around in this pivot here. You've got a sculpted milled titanium pocket clip, titanium frame lock, G10 handle, M390 steel, very much a space age knife, this one here. Very modern in its appearance with its milled scales and all that sort of business. Very fast flipping opening. Very much kind of the peak of knife technology, production knife technology at the very least. There's always custom chaps who are doing very complex stuff, but that's about as good as I've got so far. And then probably in about that same level as this Benchmade 940. This is about as complex a knife that you can get into Australia, simply because it's got quite a complicated little locking system. The axis lock has an infinity-shaped spring in there. It's a ambidextrous locking system, unlike lots of these other ones, which require sort of mainly right-hand preferential, apart from the back locks. And knives like this weren't allowed in Australia until a couple of years ago, when the laws did loosen up a little bit, in a very rare occurrence for that to happen. But yeah, so you've got quite complex, very rapid deploying one-hand opening knife, with a kind of a fair bit of detail going on in this portion of the knife here. To take these apart, there is a few steps to push things aside and very delicately operate springs and whatnot. Pocket clip, good blade steel, aluminium handle, all milled, sculpted, shaped. Kind of on the definitely on the more complex level of knife design. So, why, if you can start here, would you go all the way back to here? Well, there's a few reasons. I think a knife like this is good in any collection if you are a collector. I've generally been happy with these sorts of knives. I've always had this one because a dear friend got it for me, and I never throw away a thing that a friend gets me, or sell or trade. But yeah, generally I've been happy with this level of cutlery, perhaps with these two as my most sort of basic, but then I had been looking at these for a long time, these great Eastern Cutlery knives. I watch the Apostle P, I watch those knife channels that sort of revere these. I read everyday commentary about his Northwoods knives, Indian River Jack. I've seen the saga of the Canal Street Cutlery and their amazingly fit and finished knives, which unfortunately shut down. Northwood Knives, Everyday Barlow, I had my ear to the ground on that one, which didn't end up being as well fit and finished. So I have sort of been waiting for the one that really spoke to me to come along, and this was the one that I saw. I first saw this when the Apostle P got a factory run of his own design of this knife, so he just went the ebony wood handled design. And when I saw that, I thought, oh, I really like that, but I think I would prefer it in a bone, just to go as traditional as possible. And so here it is. A great thing about a knife like this is that it is completely unalarming for everyone to look at. It's the method of using it. There is nothing that's going to startle anyone about pulling this out of your pocket. It's actually the sort of thing that even non-knife people will probably either find interesting or just completely look past and not even be aware of, that it's in the same room as them. And that is because, it's got the walk and talk. And by walk and talk, it's this and then this. That's what it means. It's the two-stage opening process, and it does loosen up eventually, but it is always going to be fairly much a two-handed affair, and a considered two-handed affair as well. So very, very people-friendly. I think these are really interesting to look at and interesting to have in my hand. They don't have the same fun factor as a knife like this, so it isn't a fidgeter's knife, but it is it's a piece that you like to look at. And I know when you describe something like a piece, it makes you sound like a bit of a tool, but it is. It's a bit. There's a little bit of art to these that when you just like to hold and admire and sort of look at how the jigging's gone, and knowing that yours is probably, although there's lots of other ones with these materials, it's probably the only one with the exact same sort of patterns and whatnot as this one in my hand. So there's a certain. It's all about the feeling with these ones. It really is. You're not going to be able to use your knife as easily and effectively as pretty much any of these other ones on the table. But it's something about just having a piece of history, piece of knife history, just a beginning point in knife complexity is what does it for me, just in my collection, and I'll certainly carry and use it from time to time. I can't see this replacing pretty much any of these four here, very, very frequently carried knives. I can't see, and this one too, the Almar is probably my most carried knife. Can't see it replacing anything that's just rapidly deployable and easy, but when you're going somewhere that you're not certain who are you going to be coming across, and you might actually be wanting to use your knife, I really think this is about the best option you can get. This is in Australia where knife carry isn't 100%, and it's not even probably 50% with people being okay with it happening in front of them. So I think this is one of your better choices. This might completely bore you, and this whole video, you probably didn't even click on it if you are thinking you're going to get bored by talk about traditional knives and knife complexity and whatnot, but it doesn't bore me anymore. I've sort of come full circle and more or less wanted to have a full collection in regards to what the knife world does have to offer. There's a couple of stop gaps I probably wouldn't mind filling in between here. I wouldn't mind getting something akin to a Buck 110, but I wouldn't mind a Buck 110 and some nicer modern materials as well. But overall, pretty happy with my T-Duke Cutlery Great Eastern Cutlery number 74. What do you think of it? Do you think it's a good looking knife? Do you carry traditional knives, and why do you carry a traditional knife? Because really, when I think about why I would carry this knife, it would be either because I was interested in holding and looking at it and enjoying it for the day, or I was going somewhere where I wasn't sure who I was going to need to use my knife in front of, or even just have it be caught with one in my pocket. I would suggest if you had to go to like a courthouse or somewhere where they scan and this was accidentally in your pocket, you'd get much less shit for having this with you. You'd just be able to say, oh sorry, I forgot that, I was using it for my lunch and left it in my pocket, I'll just go and put it in the car, thank you. Rather than having something sort of a bit more tactical or rapid fire on you. So yeah, just a bit of discussion, I guess, about traditional cutlery and where it sits in my collection. I'm not going to go and get a whole bunch of these now. I think this is enough variety for me, these two. Again, maybe a buck 110 is in my future, just as a collector piece more than anything. But really, I find the enjoyment and variety of collecting these sorts of knives to be much higher than, say, getting one with a slightly different blade shape or a different handle material. Because really, to me, because I don't have a massive eye for these, all these patterns do kind of look the same to me, not different enough to want to have thousands and thousands of them, like a lot of the GEC or case knife collectors tend to. So that's just me. But I'd suggest looking into Great Eastern Cutlery if you are after a really good example of a traditional knife. If you want to have like me and just have one good one in your collection, Great Eastern Cutlery, or if you are after a locker, Miguel Nieto from Spain. Very good. Good sort of production standard and quality. Below here you get Queen Cutlery. Queen sort of seem to be a level below in fit and finish. This is the general consensus that I'm just reciting from just sort of reading through message boards and things, reading other reviews. It seems like Queen have a few more design flaws that come out in their lines. This was pretty apparent with the Everyday Barlow. It was a really fetching blue-handled bone Barlow knife from a couple of years ago that just had plagues of fit and finish problems, which would really upset people. The CPM 154 was a still in that one though, so if you are after a higher end still, you might want to look into Queen, but just be ready for perhaps a little bit less in the fit and finish, which to me is probably more important in a knife like this because I'll be seldom actually using them to do hard work. I just prefer them as handling knives. And then below that you've got Case. Case use pretty inferior materials. They're probably about half or a third of the price even to these though. So if you are more collecting for the patterns, then Case might well be a great choice for you. And then below that there's lots of the Chinese makers like Schrade, Winchester, Rough Rider. They make perfectly competent, and they're for the real, either if you're really budget conscious and you still like this type of knife, or if you are a real pattern collector and pattern hunter and you just like having all the different types of traditionals. Rough Rider seem to do pretty well. Nicest Knives is a great YouTube channel if you are interested in an expansive traditional knife collecting type of channel, so maybe look him up. I'll pop a link in a card up above me here as well. So thanks for sitting with me and hearing my rant on traditional knives. A couple of other little things. I will be doing the CRKT knife giveaway. I've come down with this crap cold. It's a matter of opening up my computer when my kids aren't climbing all over me and actually looking through all of those responses. I've got the video saved in my privates, in my private list, so people can't keep commenting on it because it did close on the 1st of March. But I will get to that. I'm sorry it's been so long. I've just haven't had the time for it. I've had other videos to be doing because I've had stuff that have been borrowed and whatnot come through. Check out my Instagram if you're keen. At the moment, I've got this big old book of old-fashioned porn, and I'm putting knives over these old sort of porn photos, if you will. So it's not going to be gratuitous nudity, but it's just a bit silly, and I just find it really interesting. And I find it somewhat encouraging that deviance has been a part of the human condition for hundreds and hundreds of years, and it's nothing new. As Sigmund Freud said, there's no you either have sex or you don't, and the rest is just a matter of taste. And it's quite funny. You see back in the 1800s, these people would have had to hold these poses for for minutes at a time just to get the camera working. It's very interesting. So check out my Instagram. That's going on there at the moment. I know it's not for everyone. I know these gear videos often I have some conservative viewers, and that's completely fine. But if that does sound interesting to you, it's not too bad. I promise you, it's not too grotesque or anything like that. Just a bit of a funny thing I'm doing at the moment. So my Instagram is, as always, linked in the bottom. So check that out too. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for hearing me chat, and I'll see you in the next video.